Okay, according to this, I'm live. I'm live. This is a live video log. As I call these videos the Unimultiverse live video logs because I'm talking about what's portrayed in media, the universe portrayed within media. In this case, I'm mostly just focusing on my thoughts on the most recent episodes of the Orville and Star Trek Discovery. Uh, Also known as STD, the thing that tries to pass for Star Trek nowadays. Which it is Star Trek, whatever. But anyway, yeah, okay, everything's blank and void. I'm gonna flash this video into existence. That's the gimmick, the intro I do for these videos. If it was a pre-recorded video, I'd do some, editing to see a flash of light and the universe would flash into existence, sort of like an appearance of the early universe revealing to become galaxies, and that would become the video as time passes rapidly, becoming whatever the universe comes into being. Or it might come into existence with the flashing of the headlights of a vehicle. There might be a flying car intro which does something to the logo to bring the video into existence. But this is low tech. This is low tech. This is low tech. So let's flash this video into existence. Let's big bang this video into existence with a fully formed universe where we've recently watched the Orville and even suffered through some Star Trek Discovery, and we're here to talk about them. And boom! Flash of light, video things form in front of us, and yeah, all right, that's my excessively long, rambled out intro, which is basically just me playing peekaboo with the camera. Yeah. The fact, it causes, and I know it's a pretty lame effect, and just me, a card that's mostly black, just taking the card and, and boom, there we go. Lame effect, but, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's just me starting off a video. All right, and yeah, lame effect, whatever. But I wanted to do an intro. That's my intro. And of course, if this was putting the card away now, it's actually expired. I gotta get that one renewed. Anyway, oh yeah, and of course, if it was a pre-recorded video, there would be flying car and a logo. So here we go. Here's the Autobot Cobalt, whatever his name was. Camshaft, Camshaft. Yeah. Oh, here comes a flying car. Which, that's the Autobot version of a Cobalt, so that'd probably be good enough. That'd be about as good as a Cavalier, because I think the Autobots could make a Cobalt better, and a better Cobalt is a Cavalier. It's just kind of how it works. The General Motors Delta platform, what's the better platform? It was the J car. It was the J car. Yeah. Old camshaft. And if he's much like a Cobalt, then you'd have a couple camshafts. Have a camshaft for the exhaust and a camshaft for the intake, and the styling of the Cobalt. It is a bit like a Cavalier. I mean, this could be a Cavalier. It's an Autobot, so probably is a Cavalier instead. They go with a Cavalier instead of a Cobalt. They have better taste. Or a Chevy Monza. The old Monza wasn't too bad, at least from what I know, anyway. But yeah, the Monza was a pretty cool looking car. I don't have much experience with them, but I like the Monza. And the Cavalier. And I don't totally hate the Cobalt, but anyway, whatever. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, intro, ramble forward with an intro, keeping my energy levels up with Monster. The last time I did one of these, I joked if you want to pick whether or not I had the blue can or the red can of Monster energy drink. Now, if you're not subscribing to me on Subscribestar, then you don't get to choose. But really, I'm not listening to chat anyway. I'm not interested in human contact at the moment anyway. So, you don't get to choose it. For all I know, this could have been the same can of blue Monster that I chose the red can instead of last time. I don't know if it's the same can or not. It's the same stuff, If you're subscribing to me on Subscribestar, then you would have the right to choose whether or not my next video You wouldn't care if the next video was fueled by the blue flavor or the red flavor. But need to keep my energy levels up. Or else this will just be another video like the time that I was talking about. Oh, it's the 10th birthday of the Xbox 360. The best console of its generation is now 10 years old. And yeah, there's leaving. Anyway. Alright, so the ORVILLE did another great episode. Did they outdo themselves once again? Well, no, they didn't outdo themselves, but I don't really know how they could have just kept getting better. So, you know, what everybody really cares about, what everybody's thinking about, you know, is how great the ORVILLE is. And anybody who's exposed to it, anybody with any common sense is thinking about, they should be renewed for Season 3 by now, if the corporate masters at Fox and Disney have any sense at all. They'd be renewing them already. But, alright, so let's talk about Star Trek Discovery, because we really want to talk about the ORVILLE. Let's get Discovery out of the way. The half-assed excuse for Star Trek that's on television right now. Brought to you by the same geniuses that thought Star Trek 2009 was an acceptable script. And granted, the average moviegoer who doesn't care about Star Trek, who was easily distracted by, oh, look, there's a baby in the start of the movie. Oh, look, there's a Corvette, there's a car. Oh, look, there's explosions and lens flares. If you were impressed by that and didn't care how absurdly inappropriate the overall plot line was just kind of jumbled together, you know, like the point where Spock's mother dies and she falls out of the transporter beam. You know, the Earth, or the surface of planet Vulcan, opens up beneath her and swallows her just as they're getting beamed up. She basically, the sparkling effect already happened. They basically fell out of the transporter beam. Might as well say she just fell out of the transporter beam. I mean, it might as well have been the Monty Python foot of death animation coming down with that sound effect, just squishing her as a plot excuse for killing off Spock's mother in Star Trek 2009. Look, I actually like the alternate timeline story. I like the idea of splitting the timeline with time travel. I like that thing. Parallel universes resulting from time travel. I love those concepts. I like those concepts. What I don't like is an incredibly stupid ass movie. I mean, the orbital skydiving scene, what was that just to say? Well, you know what looks kind of cool? Mountain Dew commercials. Let's make this look like a Mountain Dew commercial, except instead of being, you know, full of carbonated water, or, well, the version of it in the States actually has caffeine in it. Well, actually, you can get caffeinated Mountain Dew here, but it's a special brand. Instead of making it look like it has caffeine, let's just make it look like it's full of crystal meth. You know, well, it's going to be like a Mountain Dew commercial of crystal meth. Just over the top, blown-ass crazy. We're going to go skydiving, orbital fucking skydiving, onto a doomsday weapon hanging on the planet Vulcan's atmosphere. I remember that scene. I remember when I first watched that scene. And they're like, our weapons are offline or some shit like that. You know, well, we gotta send people down to it. And I thought to myself, why don't they just push a torpedo out of an airlock and, you know, guide it down? You know, why do they have to pull off orbital skydiving? And they're going down to this thing with explosives. And I'm like, phasers are crazy powerful weapons. Why aren't they skydiving down towards this thing? Why don't they start firing their phasers at the damn thing while they're going down towards it? And then they land on it, they're going to set their explosions, but then they have to have a fight with the Romulans, an absurd action scene. So they fight with the Romulans on top of this thing, you know. They lose their explosives, so those explosives, I thought, okay, maybe they couldn't shoot it with their hand phasers while they were skydiving down, because there might be some extra special reason for this, such as the explosives were just powerful enough, just a controlled enough charge to blow it up. But they lose the explosives. So the Romulans that they were fighting on top of this thing, they take their blasters that the Romulans dropped during the fight, and they just blasted the fucking things with the Romulan disruptors. So if the disruptors could do it, why couldn't their fucking hand phasers? Why did that scene have to exist? Of course, there's also the scene where they just kind of like toss Kirk onto the ice world. Like, man, yeah, let's just drop Kirk off on Hoth, you know? A world so close to Vulcan that apparently Spock could witness the destruction of Vulcan from there. But yet they were at warp for a little bit before they dropped Kirk off there. Yeah, and yeah, it's a nice world. And they dropped Kirk off. He just happened to be running from a monster that gets tossed aside by another monster, and yeah, the monster didn't want to eat the other monster. It just wanted to be the one to chase Kirk instead. It just happens across. Oh, it just happens across Spock. It just happens across the one person that can save the whole fucking universe. Okay, granted, they might have been both heading towards the same outpost. The escape pod might have dropped them there because it was close to the escape outpost. But with all the excuses you could come up with, it's still just a lame series of bad coincidences. And they just happen across the one person who can save the universe. And I've cursed and screamed about how fucking stupid that fucking movie was for years and years and years and years and years. But then they happen across Scotty. There's just the one other person they need to save the whole universe just happens to be there. But of course, he's there because he decided to do live animal experimentation on Admiral Archer's Beagle. It's like this moment. It's like, Admiral Archer, the captain from my favorite Star Trek. It's always between Archer or Picard. Who's my favorite Star Trek captain, you know? And it's like... But Star Trek Enterprise is by far my favorite Star Trek TV series. And they mentioned Archer. You hear Archer. And it's like, well, wait, this motherfucker did live animal experimentation on Admiral Archer's Beagle. Obviously not the same one from the show, because Porthos would have been dead of old age long by then. And Archer would be amazingly old at this time, too. But Scotty's now doing live animal experimentation. Like, it's like... you say this won't work? I'm sure this works. This will work so well, I'm going to put somebody's beagle through it. Yeah, won't you beam yourself, you stupid prick? But then in the sequel, they resurrect, Kirk dies, and they resurrect him using Khan's blood. Yes, the blood of Khan. Now it's resurrection juice. The same creative team behind those movies. Many of those people... are behind the Star Trek Discovery. But this most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, it wasn't all bad. In fact, when it first started up, I was getting into it. It was like they were showing scenes previously on Star Trek, and it was scenes from The Cage. Oh boy, The Cage. I really liked The Cage. I liked The Cage. The Cage was cool. It was one of those episodes when I watched it, it was like, I came away from that actually not liking Pike nearly as much as Kirk or Picard, because Pike came off as sexist in that episode. There were just so many, there was just a line about him, you know, and in the early 90s, you know, that was painfully outdated, where Pike was like making some lines about having a female yeoman or something like that, and some of those lines came off as painfully sexist. And I know it was written in the 60s, which at the time was like, they weren't forward enough thinking to realize that, you know, it wouldn't take long before that would be outdated. I mean, when I was a kid in the 80s, if I had been watching that in the 80s, but I didn't watch Star Trek in the 80s, but back in the 80s when I was watching other things, if that had been a line and something, I would have been like, that's just painfully sexist. But you know what? You can get past it. You know, 1960s writing, you know, what you gonna do about it? Bad moment, but whatever. You know, anyway, you know, but still, for The Cage, the overall episode, I came away from The Cage enjoying that episode. It was thoughtful. It was intelligent. It was what I wanted in science fiction. It was what I liked about Star Trek in a way. And you know what? Other than those lines that made him seem kind of sexist, I actually liked Pike other than that. And I liked the number one character, and, you know, the interaction he had with his doctor, who was also his bartender, was kind of interesting because he had just been through a bad mission, lost some people, and he was, you know, there was a lot of thoughtful things about The Cage. So starting off an episode of Star Trek Discovery with previously on Star Trek, and it was Star Trek. It wasn't just Star Trek Discovery or any other Star Trek. It was a Star Trek that at one time just went by the name Star Trek, before we came to know of it as Star Trek the Original Series. So, you know, that was really cool. And it even shows the Telosians. And then they show the Telosians again later in the episode. It's like, why does the 1960s special effects look so much better than what they thought was supposed to pass as Telosian now? And another thing about the Telosians back then, that, you kind of can joke about them having, the big butt heads, because of the shape of their heads with the lobes and that, and all that. Okay, they established the Telosians, whatever level of biodiversity throughout the species. It's kind of like a distinctly established shape for their forehead, for their whole head, for their bodies in general. All right? So I get it that they're trying to come up with another design that's like a big skull, big brain design, There's the articulate way to put it. Big brain design! Yeah. Anyway, the big brain design of them. Okay, fine. But if you notice, like, the bulging out of it had a specific shape that's kind of formed like a forehead ridge. So if there's, like, lines to the overall shape of their heads, then one of the lines would be like the forehead ridge. So why did they completely replace that with some sort of nose thingy that kind of just went up the shape of their head to totally change the look of them? I know, one look or the other could have been an illusion. But why, when they revealed themselves to show what they're supposed to actually be, did they go from looking like an amazingly impressive alien effect from the most prototypical prototype Star Trek ever, to looking like a rejection from the Next Generation B-list space aliens, And even if it was going to be a bad Telosian, why couldn't they have kept the overall shape of the head, but then they had to go with that thing like the nose? Like, why is the nose bone a ridge that goes up over the whole big brain head shape design that they had? It's like, what? All right. But the thing is, visual rebooting aside, ignoring that for a moment, ignoring that, how bad was the story? Overall, the story wasn't too bad. Not too bad. Not too bad. Not too great. I mean, still, Section 31 being operating in the open seems a bit weird. They could go with the excuse, Pike is freely talking about it because he learned of their existence somehow accidentally. They could still write in an excuse for that. And that anybody off this ship, like the ship was basically a Section 31 ship that was hinted at right from the beginning. Even in the very first episode, Section 31 seemed to be involved with the ship, but kind of secretive. I mean, somebody made the comment about, wasn't there like some sort of comment about all the black badges or something like that? I thought there was like some sort of odd comment about that, somebody could tell something weird was up with the ship, or I forget what it was. I thought there was like some line like that in the one of the early episodes from season 1. I don't know, but I don't fucking know. I don't know what to say about that show. It's fucked up. It's done fucked up. Alright, so you still have that. One of the things is like, what the fuck is up with Saru? Saru used to be cool. Like some people would say, his species has a natural tendency for fear. He could never become... I've actually heard that comment. He would never be a good captain in Star Trek because he has a natural sense of fear. And it's like, no. Awareness, of danger and a heightened sense of caution would not make a bad captain. Someone who has to decide whether to put lives in danger or not. It's how they handle it that would make the difference. Somebody that was completely numb to that would be a bad captain. It's just a matter of whether he can make the value judgments with that extreme sense of fear that's supposed to be natural to his species. And Saru seemed to have a natural ability, or it might have been an acquired ability, an ability to handle his sense of fear, even if it was one that was natural to his species. Now that sense of fear is gone, I don't, it's like he's become a idiot. And I don't say that because he's suddenly being bold and becoming reckless. That'd be interesting, as if he accidentally started getting reckless and he had to reevaluate his decision making because he no longer had an ultra awareness of danger. But one of the things basically what I'm saying is, one of the moments that really got to me in that episode was when resurrected dead guy from season 1 encounters messed up kind of Klingon, kind of human guy from season 1 when they kind of met. And resurrected dead guy, you know what? Being brought back from the dead, being killed, then having your existence transported into some sort of fungus space. I don't know what mycelial network they call it. The fungus space. The mushroom world. The mushroom kingdom. After being copied, having your full consciousness and physical form copied in the mushroom kingdom, and spending months being chased by spore monsters, having to cover yourself in poison to keep them from eating you, and then coming back to real life. what a story! What a fucking great. When you think of Star Trek, if that came to mind, you didn't know Star Trek. But anyway, that's a story. That's the character's backstory. After going through that, yeah, you'd probably be a bit messed up. Probably wouldn't be in your best state of mind. Okay, and he wants to take everything out on the person who was a warped, half Klingon, half human creation with a confusing, contradictory backstory of, okay, they turned the Klingon into a human using parts from a human that was killed, or was it the human was turned into a Klingon, and the consciousness over one consciousness, and blah, 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 whatever from the first season. All right, okay. A natural instinct for the two of them to hate each other. The proper response to that, which Saru kind of took control of the situation, is not, yeah, let's let them fight it out. No. And no, just no. That's. You know what? I think that could have passed to that stupid fucking show named Battlestar Galactica. I despise that show, okay? I'm not sure what shows that would pass for an acceptable character moment, but when they I'm not saying it was bad writing or that those two would end up fighting. But when Saru was like, let's let this play out. No, that's not acceptable writing. And if it's like, no, like, I don't, words for how inappropriate that is escape me. It's like stupid. The only thing I could think of is, why in the hell would they even think that scene was appropriate? And then I thought, well, people keep blaming the show for being ruined by social justice warriors. Could this be like some sort of social justice warrior concept of toxic masculinity kicking in or something like that? I don't know, but I don't know. But was actually a reasonable scene later, given how stupid things went at that point. The reasonable scene later on when Pike said to Saru, questioning Saru and letting that happen, like. I got one of the few things I like in Star Trek Discovery is Pike. The scenes with number one was cool too. Number one, when they had her, if they ever gave her a name other than number one. When I first saw number one, it's like, oh, they've recast Majel Barrett, because Majel Barrett Roddenberry, was number one. Of course, later she was also known for being Loxana Troy, and and the many computer voices, She was the voice of Star Trek, especially the computer. Yeah, but in a previous episode, when you had Pike talking to number one, I was like, These are the characters I want to follow. I'm not sure that the writers of the show are competent to give me a good show with these characters, but in that scene, it didn't ruin them for me, and I'm like, I want to see more of this. And then we go back to the regular life on the Discovery with all the characters that have had some good moments, but ultimately were ruined. Yeah. So Pike's reaction to Saru's incompetence seemed appropriate, if not a little too tolerant. The proper response would be, Saru, I'm pretty tempted to put a really bad mark on your record here because that was some incompetent handling of your staff. There's people working for you. And when a fight breaks out, don't let them fight it out. Especially not when you're dealing with two psychologically damaged individuals coming together in a way that is highly inappropriate. So yeah, pretty unreasonable scene, I thought. I had a lot of problems with that. Yeah, how Cyrus, I don't know. But by Star Trek Discovery standards, and in a moment where a character makes a highly inappropriate decision, like let them fight it out, is kind of par for the course. I guess my standards have risen a little bit, that I'm even having a problem with that, because I said it before, I'll say it again. Star Trek Discovery has broken the bottom line for standards. At this point, they might as well just say the warp drive is powered by candy corn. All right, so there was that. I loved the intro where it was previously on Star Trek, and it was an actual Star Trek show. And then it's followed up with Star Trek Discovery, and that's when things take a downhill spiral. But I'm liking Pike. In fact, what I would like to this is my thoughts. This is what I'd like to see. What I'd like to see in an episode of Star Trek Discovery that would make it an enjoyable episode is to see Pike look at the crew of the Discovery, and just say, screw you guys, I'm going home. And then him just go off to the Enterprise, get together with number one, and maybe have Spock shave and tell him to act like fucking Spock, and, and then just have the Enterprise go off and do something, That's what I want to see. I want to see the Enterprise go off and do something. It's not that I have a specific urge to revisit the Constitution-class Enterprise, and if we were to revisit the Constitution-class Enterprise, my preference would be to do a series based around Robert April with writers that... not the writers who have been writing for Star Trek Discovery. Maybe get together the writers who did Star Trek Enterprise, who are now working on the Orville. Get those guys together, get some of them together. And write a Star Trek show based around Robert April and the Constitution-class Enterprise, the old 1701, the first one in the series of 1701s, that'd go over good for me. But you know what, I'd settle for right now, just Pike saying, screw you guys, I'm going home, and then watching Pike, doing stuff on the Enterprise. Wouldn't have to be major. He could be just sitting there, sitting in the chair, polishing the buttons on the side of it, asking, them how many particles of space dust per cubic meter they detect. And, that would be more interesting than anything I'd expect to see in Star Trek Discovery. Well, Star Trek Discovery does do interesting stuff. It just screws it up by getting stupid. So right now I'd settle for boring if the boring wasn't too horribly stupid. Yeah, that would be a step up, Just the view screen. Just the view screen of the Enterprise, and then somebody say, you know what? We've just detected a slightly more particles of space dust than average. Right about here. Oh, okay, yeah. Solar wind? A little less solar wind than usual now. Something like that, So basically, the Talosians, not a fan of the new Talosian look, and not a fan of Saru's decision-making, And I'm not sure if this... It looks like this is going to become a plot point, but I don't know. I think they're ruining Saru. Saru was actually something good from season 1. I mean, not every decision Saru made was necessarily a good one, but he was... His average was more positive than negative, I thought, came away from season 1 with liking Saru. New Saru's not, I blame the writers. I don't know. That's what I'm blaming the writers. I don't think they have a good plan in mind for Saru. But sooner or later, bad writing causes a character to make bad decisions sooner or later. You have to decide sooner or later. It's like, all right, that was bad writing, but the character isn't really an idiot. Sooner or later, you have to say, canonically, this character's an idiot. I know, the writers thought this was a good idea. I know, the writers thought that something about this was justified. But nope, canonically speaking, if you're going to take this story serious, say that the series of events is something that is playing out in its own little universe here, you have to say, that character's an idiot. Speaking of idiots, I believe Michael Birmingham, whatever her name is, the character that started the war with the Klingons, and they've been struggling really hard to make her likable. I think she had a few good lines. Spock was acting like a bit of a jackass and said, why don't you ask me, I don't know, some sort of different question. I forget how he worded it. She goes, oh, do you really think the beard is working? It was her just way of... personally, I think the reason why Spock has the beard is he just never got around to shaving. Because he was busy being locked up in a mental asylum that he went to because he realized he was in trouble. But the whole idea of Spock being a crazy murderer actually played out in a way that I thought it would have if the series went in a good direction with it. And it's like, hey, I was thinking that the murders were actually him fighting against Section 31 and somebody got killed or something like that. But it was actually, they were going to turn him over to Section 31, and he didn't kill them. He's framed for murder. He didn't actually kill anybody. Yeah, so at least that's not too bad. The whole crap with the Telosians, though, they wanted payment for helping Spock and Michael. They're people joke about how absurdly important the writers keep making the Michael character to everything that happens. And I gotta say they're right. Because the Telosians wanted to know. They wanted a copy of the memories involving Michael's falling out with Spock. And I'm like, why? Why do you care about that? Why is that so important? I mean, and at first I thought they might have needed that as some sort of like psychic link between Spock and Michael so that they could tap into a sane mind and a crazy mind and then and relive, what made them have the falling out as like some sort of mental bonding as a way to as like a threshold to understand how one character worked and the other one didn't. Yeah, I thought there was going to be like some sort of like psychological equivalent to technobabble as the reason for it. Oh, excuse me. Nope. It was just kind of like payment. They're just kind of really interested in her life. That's the payment for helping them out. Kind of attitude. That was basically the attitude you get from the whole fucking thing. So I was like, yeah. Everything about Michael Burnham is like absurdly important. And it's like people have been commenting, and I didn't get too much into this myself. I didn't really feel much. I didn't feel as though it was incredibly important, like worth rambling or ranting about too much. But people have like commonly said how the character's not that great of a character, but they find the most absurd ways to have the story revolve around her. And I resisted ranting about that too much. But when the Telosians really need to know why she had a falling out with Spock, That's what it came off to me like. Why? Why is that the important thing to them? Some people had issues with how the death penalty hasn't been established yet for going to Telosia, the Telosian planet, and the idea of Starfleet having a death penalty comes off as pretty stupid. I always thought, you know. And that was in the original series, but they chose not to ever mention it having been on the records in Next Generation or anything like that. So I'd assume that even that has gone away by the time period of Next Generation. Of course, in the original series, the whole death penalty reason is kind of like somebody that goes to Telosian homeworld, they might come back away from there with the Telosians' mental powers and get everybody addicted to crazy mental powers and ruin all of society, which I don't buy that. I don't buy that. When they came up with the death penalty for going to Talos, I thought that was a bit of a lame moment in the original series, but nonetheless, it is a canonical moment in the original series. That said, Star Trek Discovery had last season, I think, made a comment about there being no death penalty, which is technically workable if they had not decided on the death penalty for going to that planet yet. So they may yet come up with a reason for placing the death penalty in effect for going to that planet. But yeah, that was another questionable thing, that the planet was considered off limits, but they have not yet established a death penalty for going to that planet. That's I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But the whole time I was thinking, okay, it's a forbidden planet, but does it have the death penalty on it for going there? No. Okay, so I guess they established that later, which is fine. There could be future dealings with that planet that might change the rules. You know, hey, maybe a future dealing will explain why the Tolans all of a sudden had a nose that went all the way up their head. Speaking of noses, get some xylometazoline into my sinuses. At least I think that's how you. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. I have allergies. Decongestant nasal spray. Get it up there before my sinuses swell shut. All right. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I didn't have like a strong opinion on the whole thing that went on with Michael and Spock, because it wasn't a thrilling plot line that I would ever really hope to see in Star Trek. But it wasn't as bad as I'd come to expect for Star Trek Discovery. Excuse me. And my biggest problem with it ended up being what they thought would pass for the appearance of a Telosian. Yeah. So there's that. And really, the episode, it didn't stay with me. It's like I'm trying to think of little things that worked for me or failed, but that's what stood out for me. The positive, I loved the intro where it's like previously on Star Trek, and they had this whole intro that was using animations based on the scenes from that episode of the original series, which was the pilot episode, which really didn't air as a regular episode, but actually kind of aired as a VHS cassette, which I have no problem with that. I'll take that over TV airing any day. You play it and replay it all you want. Same for the DVD disc. Then later it was a DVD disc. I like the Cage. I approve of the Cage as an episode. But flashback to the Cage as previously on Star Trek. Yeah, like that part of it. And then after that, there wasn't a whole lot for me to say about it. But what? Pike still being on the Discovery. He should be like. How is the Enterprise not fixed up yet? I mean, what's going on with the Enterprise? Yeah, yeah, whatever was wrong with the Enterprise. I mean, I think they would have had that crap sorted out by now. From the perspective of wanting to see Pike in episodes of Star Trek Discovery, from that perspective, you know what? Pike's probably one of the best things on Star Trek Discovery. They haven't ruined him yet. So it's not that I specifically want to never see the character again, but yeah, he should have his actual starship back by now. So yeah, that should be over and done with by now, logically. Yeah, so I guess that's all there is for me to say about any of that. And yeah, I should just move on to talking about the Orville. Because the Orville was on the exact same night. Normally, Star Trek Discovery airs first. Then the Orville airs after it, and I'll watch them like that. But I was actually out. Like, this is March 9th already? Well, this is Saturday. And looking back on the calendar, let's see, Thursday was the 7th? No, wait, what? Am I looking at the right part of the calendar? Yeah, this is March 9th. All right, this is the 9th. Yeah, okay, yeah, the 7th, yeah. Yeah, well, 2 days back, yeah, I should just did the math. 7, yeah. I was just looking at the calendar looked wrong, and there's a part over here, then there's a part here, different months, so I thought I might have been looking at the wrong month. But anyway, all right. Anyway, I was out. Better off spending time with humans I want to spend time with, so that's what I was doing. And by the time I got home in time to watch the later airings, in which case I actually got to watch the Orville first, and then watch Star Trek Discovery. So after watching a perfectly fine episode of the Orville, then I would switch over, get that lovely intro of previously on Star Trek, and it's scenes from Star Trek the original series, and I'm like, ooh, I like this, they're referencing the original series, and I'm seeing original series stuff, and then it's like, then you kind of like, then it all converts, and it's all like Star Trek Discovery, and then it's like, oh well, Star Trek Discovery. But anyway, no, I started off with the good show first this time. If I'd started watching earlier in the night, Star Trek Discovery would have aired first. It would have gone into overtime, overlapping with part of the Orville. And a lot of the time, I'd miss a little bit of the Orville at the start. But I'd watch the Orville twice, because the Orville is on again later, but not as late as Star Trek Discovery. So I, let myself miss a little bit of the first airing of the Orville, because I know I'd always catch the second airing of the Orville. And, yeah. And the Orville was good. The Orville was good. Previously, I couldn't believe how the show just kept getting better and better and better. The opening episode for the season was a character piece. So focused on personal interaction. That's a good way to go. I like those episodes. There's nothing wrong with that. If people just thought, I need more action, I say, screw you. We need more character. We need personality. We need more story. And the next episode after that was another character piece, which made us, once again, remind us why we love the characters on the show. Then after that, we had the episode where they went back to, or I shouldn't say go back, because they never really had an episode on Saleya, where they take Alora, if I got her name right, Alora? I'm horrible with names, even names of characters I watch over and over and over again. Anyway, they took the Saleyan officer back to planet Saleya. The planet named for Mount Saleya. Only they spell it with an X instead of an S. But they still pronounce it Saleya. I want to say Zalayan and call it Zaleya. But they say Saleya. They say Saleyan. They say it like it's spelled with an S. It's spelled with a Z. That's so Star Trek doesn't sue them for naming the planet after Mount Saleya, a very, very famous landmark on planet Vulcan. It's alternate reality planet Vulcan. It is. It's just not a hot, dry planet. It's instead it's a planet that's larger. It's larger and heavier gravity. But so instead of being hot, dry with a thin atmosphere, it's heavy, thick atmosphere. Heavy planet. It's alternate reality Vulcan, where the planet had more mass. It's a heavy heavy Vulcan, Saleya. Yeah, they went back to that planet. They trying to remember every episode. They had the episode that was kind of like, kind of paralleled the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Data did dating, and only it was like that episode, only even better. Then they did an episode that was kind of like The Outcast, only done better. Remember the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Outcast, which dealt with sexuality and gender relations and awkwardly and clunky, and at best, the best they came away with from that episode is Riker's an evolved human, so he's not going to get upset if the person he gets attached to has an innie or an outie for their genitals, because we don't really know how it works with the androgynous species that he got involved with, but we realize that they have their own equivalency to homophobia and other phobias, sexual related, whatever, hang-ups of Earth of the past, which, something comparable to contemporary Earth's homophobia. They have that towards, I guess it would be a heterophobia, actually, what they would have. But, I had to deal with, in a way, it even touched on whole, what do they call it? The gay conversion therapy that the nutcases in the southern parts of some countries try to do, the evangelicals try to pull off. There was another term for it, but was escaping my mind. But basically, it paralleled that, the episode of The Outcast that The Next Generation did, which came off as incredibly clunky and awkward. And they did basically the same sort of concept with the Orville and the Mocklins, who have their own form of heterophobia, and how their culture handles it. And it was an amazingly thoughtful and well-written episode. And it was impressive. And the new character, Talia, is that how you say her name? Talia? I'm horrible with names, but the new Saleyan, when they first introduced her, she was kind of like, they described her as having, punched her previous captain, because it was a necessary diplomatic thing to win over the crew, the ship that they needed assistance from, and it was an emergency situation. And I'm like, okay, I know you're a super strong life form, but when they said that she broke his nose, it's like, it came off as, yeah, this person would have to have enough control that was definitely a wrong thing to do. It's like, should have had better control than that, yeah, like, yeah, just straight up, that it did. And when the captain of this ship, the Orville, he was questioning it, and the first officer was, no, I think she's good, and he's like, I don't know, it's like, I'm not sure if this is a good choice. So that's a reasonable response, because you got to think, it's like, yeah, I know she's super strong, but you think she could have, she still have like control over it. It's like she could have fake punched him, or it just came off like that. That it looks like you're gonna question whether this is gonna be a truly likable character. And in that episode, it's like it's hard not to love the character after that episode. The character came off as like the personality of the person, and the concern she had for somebody else and what she had to do to uncover their crime, despite the fact their crime is basically hiding from somebody that was going to ruin their life and possibly even their family's life by revealing them for something that is of no harm to anybody. They made the character is extraordinarily likable. Like, there's that when you're first introduced to the character, you should come away with it, I don't know if this character's gonna be likable. And yeah, this character is an amazing character in this episode. If the character hadn't already proven that this was going to be a great character, yeah, this is an excellent character, a very likable and enjoyable addition to the overall show. And that episode, again, it would be very hard to top that episode. That episode managed to top the previous episode, which was the episode that dealt with Data trying to date somebody, only done even better with Isaac. This episode was basically the Next Generation's episode of The Outcast, only done better with Tala, the Selayan character, and a new Mocklin character that was introduced for the episode. And it was also a reminder of what a likable character Bortus is. Because, you could see, Bortus having sympathy for this person whom the customs of his world would, have him locked away. And, Bortus might have been angry at this person for cheating on him in the past, but at the same time, understood it. And, the closest thing you have to a villain in the story is Clyden, who ultimately his crime is basically functioning under the way his society has conditioned him. And, what Clyden was horribly in the wrong in many ways, but at the same time, you can't let him be framed for something he didn't do. You have to uncover the truth and what had happened. It was a complex and very thoughtful story. And the fact that, between the writing and the acting, you came away from it with actually seeing the characters being affected by everything, too. Even when they were silently looking off into space, parallel scenes of the characters just looking off into space. It was an amazing episode. It's how do you top that? Well, then they did the two-parter with the Kalons, and it's sweet merciful fuck. I mean, these might not be the most thoughtful stories compared to what we've been seeing on the Orville, but holy fuck, they've taken their own standards for just being impressive, and they've gone beyond. It's part one of Identity. What? That was impressive. And there had been references to them discovering a bunch of skulls in some of the... I think it was Comic-Con or somewhere where they were talking about season 2, and they talked about... they gave away a skull to somebody in the audience. And it's you don't know what it's from, but there's got to be an episode where you're going to see a bunch of skulls, It's and they kind of had this tone, when you see it, it's going to be big. And it's when they unveiled that the Kalons were living on a world where, the underground sewers were basically mass graveyards where they disposed of the bodies of the people that previously lived on the planet. And it's all over the planet. When they first find these skulls, that is a creepy, awesome reveal. I mean, there was already something kind of eerie and creepy about the Kalons. And when you go to that planet, it's you can tell something's up, something's wrong. But then when that's the reveal, yeah, that was pretty sweet. That was some pretty awesome television. That was goddamn good storytelling. And then part 2, yeah, part 2 was fucking awesome. Yeah, part 2. Yeah, part 2. Yeah, part 2 of that was awesome. There was one point watching part 2, I just kind of broke out laughing. Not because a specifically funny thing happened, but it was just so straight up good. And in some ways, it was just the automatic result of what you had before. You had to have a good reason for the characters to be left alive by the Kalons. And they did it. They made it seem reasonable. You had to have a way for them to retake the ship. And they did it. Also redeeming Isaac. Hell yeah. They did it. What they didn't have to do, because a lot of shows would get out of it, they didn't have to have a big-ass battle at the end of it. And they did it. They didn't have to tie in The Krill, they could have came up with some other plot device, but they did it, and it worked. And I saw the Orville's official YouTube channel had posted like the part of the battle to YouTube, like that actual space battle at the end. And when I rewatch it, I still kind of break out laughing when you're about to get to the point where the Krill launch the fighters, and of course Gordon's one of the people in the Krill fighters, and that was just fucking awesome. It was. I mean that show just keeps getting better. And as a follow-up, I gotta say, it didn't manage to outdo itself. No, at some point you have to stop outdoing yourself. The thought that just popped out of my mouth when previously rambling about how good the last Orville was, it was so good that I literally broke out laughing, but not specifically because any one humorous thing happened. It was just so awesome I broke out laughing. I'm not sure how it could get better. What would be the response? Would I just take a heart attack from it being too good? I mean, if I'm just sitting there watching it and feel like breaking out laughing because it's that good, what would be the step further? Would next time I watch it just start orgasming because the show is so good? Would that be possible? And I don't know. The show, the next episode, it was an excellent episode, but the Orville reached the point, I guess, where just each episode just can't get better because it just can't get better. So this most recent episode was a good episode, worth watching, a hell of a lot better than anything Star Trek Discovery has done. But I can't really say it's the best episode of the season, that they kept getting better and better. We've already hit that point. Maybe the season will get even better. The Orville is pretty good at surprising a person. But yeah, this one was pretty good though, and it was a thoughtful and appropriate follow-up. The Krill are now talking peace now that they realize that the Kaylon are out there and they have the resources necessary that could do a lot of damage to either the Union or the Krill themselves. The Kaylons are a significant threat. So the Krill are talking peace, and they wanted to send the Orville because the Orville has had the most positive contact with the Krill of any ship they have, which again is another way to make everything fall on this ship. Like in Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek The Original Series, a lot of things that were just epic, important things just happened to happen to the Enterprise. And you got to assume there's other ships out there having amazing things happening to them. My nose is a little, my sinuses are kind of a little bugging me a little bit, but they're not too bad. But anyway, so I just had to stop and rub my nose. Anyway, yeah, like a lot of stuff would just happen to the Enterprise. The Enterprise would just be assigned certain things. And it looks like this is frozen. Now, well, what an image. Maybe it's just frozen on my end, but I've had this happen before. What a pose for it to stop on if that's the case. Yeah, but I see the timer still ticking on this thing. So I'm still rambling, but I think I have the perfect, I'm saying something, frozen image on my screen here. So yeah, that could be a glitch with this. A glitch going on with the video. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's happening. I'm not sure what anybody else would see. But anyway, this episode is a great follow-up. They did a reasonable reasoning for why the Orville is the ship that is contacting the Krill. Like it was all perfectly reasonable. And of course, the thing that happens is somebody escaped from a Krill prison camp. So the Krill apparently have been not just exterminating humans, but they'll sometimes take them and put them in prison camps and do who knows what to them or for what purposes they're doing that. Because you'd think the Krill just view them as lesser animals, so they would, kill them. And we've known that they've done ceremonies with killed humans. Because the Krill are crazy, horrible beings, mainly because of their religion. Very devout to their religion, which causes them to do horrible things. And it's interesting. But anyway, the Krill in this, the guy who escapes the Krill, they want him because he apparently destroyed a bunch of Krill ships when he broke out from prison, and this was after the ceasefire. We were so long after the ceasefire that resulted from the Krill and the Union collectively working together to fight a bunch of Kaylon ships. Yeah, I mean, so it's logical, but of course, this guy who was, first thing I think is this guy escaped a Krill prison planet, or Krill prison, Krill whatever. So, I don't know, he's escaping people who imprisoned him just for defending his own people against the Krill. He's in, as far as I'd be concerned, he'd be perfectly right to destroy as many Krill ships as he could to get out of there. You know, his escape, it's like the Krill want him back. It's like, well, this guy was imprisoned. That should not be a point of negotiation whatsoever. You know, I know they're desperate for peace, and peace is the better choice if you can get this species to start talking about peace. But at the same time, yeah, he was completely and utterly within his rights to want to, or to blow up any Krill that were trying to prevent him from escaping, because it was wrong for them to have incarcerated him in the first place, you know, the whole thing, you know. But at the same time, if there's anything valid about what the Krill are saying, that this guy is a criminal to any degree beyond, you know, what he needed to do to escape, you know, you got to kind of consider, are the Krill right? Did he destroy an abnormally large number of Krill ships in his escape, you know? So, yeah, they did have to investigate the whole thing, and they did. So there was an issue there. And, yeah, I would say the guy was in his right to destroy Krill starships escaping from them. But, yeah, at the same time, they do have to go forward with the concept of peace. But it's a very awkward concept. It's a very awkward thing to think about. And at the same time, thankfully, they weren't going to just straight up sell him out if he hadn't did anything wrong. Like the Krill claimed he had done stuff that was wrong. But at the same time, they had to take the Krill serious. But there was reasons to be skeptical of what he was saying. But at the same time, there's even more reason to be skeptical of the Krill, because there's so little to back up anything they said. And even backing up what they said, there's a certain level of it being questionable in the first place. It's like, okay, yeah, he destroyed Krill's ship, but you had him imprisoned for decades. So, yeah. Then you add that to the fact that he is close friends with and saved the life of somebody who's a regular character on the show, and you follow what that person's dealing with at the thought of this guy being sent back to the Krill. And then when this guy basically comes as close as possible to giving justifiable reasons for revenge against the Krill, as close as possible. I mean, really, just going out for revenge is not right. But, you know, it was again a very thoughtful episode, an interesting episode. And it was also a pretty good character moment for some of the characters. Like the Gordon character, he came in, like that was a really good moment, I thought, for the characters. Like the Gordon character, and I think her name is Tala. I'm horrible with real names as well as fictional names, you know? It's like, whatever. Went into the security officer's office and asked her if she'd like to have a drink. And he's like, are you asking me out on a date? He goes, no, nothing like that. I just want to talk, you know, like they had like that moment. And it's obvious, you know, he has to tell somebody that something's wrong. And he doesn't want to rat out his friend, but he's like trying to talk to somebody to get started in what he has to do, what he has to deal with. And it was a pretty interesting moment. Like, she wasn't like negative towards him when she's like, are you asking me out? You know, like she wasn't like rude or weird about it. And he's like, no, I just wanted to get to know. Like they were both came off as very friendly. He came off as very troubled. It seemed like a very natural moment and a very interesting moment for both characters. Um, like like the story and what the characters were going through just seemed so very well thought out, played out, acted out, and written. It was just perfect in a lot of ways. And the character who had explosive blood and nitrogen environments, I thought it was kind of odd that when she takes a hit, and looks like there's like some orangish, yellowish orange blood leaking out of her. And I was thinking, well, if her blood's that dangerous, shouldn't that blood have gone off right there? Because I thought what was coming out of her was supposed to be blood. So there's that moment. But apparently they were lucky that it didn't explode. Probably she had enough of the substance in her body that neutralizes that effect. But the other guy was taking samples of her blood to use as an explosive. And the thing is, like, if her blood is that explosive that it could be such a powerful weapon, I don't know. I find it hard to believe that it just doesn't seem like something that should be more explosive or destructive than plasma torpedoes. Like, I'm pretty sure the Krill torpedoes and the Union torpedoes in that show are both plasma torpedoes. I mean, they're not photon torpedoes like in Star Trek, and photon torpedoes in Star Trek are really matter antimatter warheads. Basically, if you look at the amount of antimatter that supposedly, if you look at like the fictional technical manuals and all that stuff, of course it's fiction, but nonetheless, if you look at what they're saying in Star Trek, and I don't know if it was ever shown on screen, but the actual manuals that describe it, the little bit of antimatter that's in a photon torpedo, the blast yield of a photon torpedo, if it was fired inside the atmosphere of a planet, should be about on par with the Tsar Bomba. And if you're not familiar with the Tsar Bomba, it's the most powerful hydrogen bomb ever designed by the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And when they actually fired one of them off, it was like a downscaled version of it because even they didn't want to deal with the full-sized version. And the shockwave from it actually echoes from the shockwave of it, circled the Earth like 3 times. So if you knew what to listen for at the right time on the right day, you might have actually heard it if you went outside and listened to just for the sound of... I don't really know what it would have sounded like around here because we're pretty far away, but apparently the auditory shockwaves from it could be detected around the globe, circling the globe 3 times. So, somebody might have thought, oh, there must have been a plane doing a sonic boom. Maybe there was thunder in the distance. Like, it's not like they would have been screaming loud on the other side of the planet. But the actual shock waves, like the actual sound, apparently circled the planet 3 times. And, yeah, that was because of it was probably a certain amount of chemical explosive in it, but also there would be the nuclear, the material that undergoes nuclear fission, and then it was a hydrogen bomb, so there's actual nuclear fusion. So, and they was like, yeah, but I'm just commenting on how powerful next Star Trek: The Next Generation photon torpedo should be, and actually in the original series, there's no reason why it shouldn't be comparable to The Next Generation. So I'm just saying the yield of science fiction weapons is technically incredible. I don't know how the ORVILLE's plasma torpedoes would compare, so we might be dealing with something significantly less powerful. But basically what I'm saying is when they talk about like the plasma torpedoes in the ORVILLE, I don't see how this chemical explosive could really compare to, other weapons, that it was such an amazing threat, especially when it has to react to nitrogen, and he's like launching it at enemy ships. And sure, there might be a lot of nitrogen inside the ship, but he must be launching in some sort of missile to penetrate the ship's hull that's capable to do that. So I don't know. That concept I thought was a little weak. The idea that he was just able to use this person's blood as a space weapon when it had to react to nitrogen. Maybe there's a certain amount of nitrogen that he put in the container with the blood that would mix when it hits its target. I don't know. That was kind of an odd thing. And even then, you're still dealing with a chemical explosive on the exterior of a ship that should be able to take weapons fire from, plasma cannons and plasma torpedoes. So that part was a little bit iffy to me, a little bit questionable. Also is a little bit questionable. Sometimes the humor in certain shows like this can go a little bit too far, such as when they had the Krill taking urine tests as a distraction. Like, that went on a little too long, got a little too silly, and then she was getting out the gloves, I guess, to do a cavity search, because I don't think after the urine test she was going for a prostate examination. So I think it was the cavity search that she was doing. But kind of funny, but at the same time kind of cringy too, because it gets a little too silly. Sometimes the silliness can hurt the world building, kind of like earlier in the season, but the character made the comment about dating a two-headed alien and one head didn't know about the other. Like, see, yeah, sometimes they pushed a little too far, but at the same time, a few minor flaws like that, it's still an excellent episode. And like I said, I had some issues with the chemical explosive being so powerful that he was able to destroy so many ships with it. Not just questioning how much blood this person has, but just also questioning how it would compare to other weapons that they would have at their disposal. Because it made it sound like this was a pretty impressive explosive, and it would have been a pretty impressive explosive, if somebody inside the ship with his blood just suddenly exploded. Yeah, that probably would take out the ship. Still, as a space-based weapon, just fairly questionable, I thought. Highly questionable, I thought, the logistics behind it. But I'll give it points. I'm just looking at this thing. Yeah, picture's still frozen. At least on my end of things, the picture's still frozen. But I'm fine with that. And, and I've been rambling on for over 73 minutes. Wow. But that's my excessive rambling thoughts about the most recent episode of the Orville. It was a great story. Great storytelling. Few little minor nitpicks here and there, such as using that particular chemical explosive weapon. Just didn't seem that it should have been quite that effective. But the actual dilemma of the episode was interesting and handled well. At the end of it, when the captain comes and apologizes to Gordon, I remember the first thing I was thinking is, you're apologizing to him? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Because when they were talking about something that had to be dealt with, they had to investigate, whether this guy might actually be a criminal by union standards when they go forward with this whole situation. He had to ask Gordon those questions. And Gordon reacted in a way that was overly harsh because Gordon was defending his friend. Just needed down a little bit more of the energy drink. So personally, I thought Gordon was the one that would end up apologizing at the end of the episode for getting a little too emotional. But actually, they had another good moment for the captain. A lot of people said that, I've heard it described that his Seth MacFarlane's acting is the weakest on the show, but at the same time, it's still good. Even the weakest actor on the show is still good. I didn't really think his acting was weak. I think his acting is actually perfect for the character he's doing. And when you think of like captains in Star Trek, usually they're in a position that makes them and their way of handling the crew around them very stiff, very serious. And actually, his character has that same distance. And when personality comes through, it comes out as, kind of like, just kind of like being a little bit of like, comes off as a decent person, comes off as kind of vulnerable, intelligent, and silly. And I think that works for the character. And that scene at the end where he's talking to Gordon about how, he's one of the few people he's friends with before he became captain. He's somebody that he kind of needs to help him get through things because it's a stressful job and he has to keep everybody at a distance. And the only other person that he has history with, it's, kind of a questionable history and has become awkward. So, talk about how he needs that character, how important that character is to him to get through things in general. It came off as a pretty natural, pretty good character moment for those characters. Nonetheless, I can just still picture one of the characters in the Krill Fighter saying that going to wash their mouth out with Gordon or some other quote. But yeah, that was just a perfect moment when the space battle and the Krill ships come in, and then they launch a Krill fighter, and one of the Krill fighters, it's Gordon. It's Gordon, and then he looks over at the other Krill and gives him that look. Yeah. That was just an awesome scene. That was awesome. Yeah, the Orville keeps outdoing itself. Yeah, I mean, this episode was great, well done, but one of the great things about the show is it's gonna take them a long time to outdo the previous episode, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. I actually saw the Amazing Atheist post something on Instagram. It was an Instagram picture by the Amazing Atheist that I don't think he made it, but I think he was posting it because he saw it somewhere and was making a statement. And it was a picture from the Orville and a picture from Star Trek Discovery with the green check mark of approval on the Orville and the X on Star Trek Discovery. And I think he wrote in the quote, "Just renew the Orville for season 3 already," or something like that, And, yeah, and a lot of other people have been saying, it's about time that season 3 for the Orville gets announced, because they damn well should be doing it. Between Fox and Disney, somebody's got to say, look, we're getting season 3. Excuse me. Now, I remember that maybe Disney maybe it's got to be a little bit iffy on getting another season. Maybe Disney has a grudge against Seth MacFarlane. It's hard to say. I remember there was apparently, this was just a rumor, I don't know that much about it, but I remember reading or listening to a video, listening to a video as opposed to watching a video, but yeah, I would have been listening to the dialogue, listening to a video. It was something about the Deadpool 2, and I have not watched Deadpool 2 yet, but I'm content with spoilers, so I'm not hiding the information from myself. In fact, I usually enjoy a movie more if I've seen spoilers about it. I want to see how it happens, and I usually get more into it if I know what's going to happen, but I still want to see how it goes down. Sometimes I enjoy a movie on the second or third viewing even more than the first viewing, or the 1,000th viewing if it's a movie like Ghostbusters or The Naked Gun, something like that. Enjoy it more and more every time I watch it. But anyway, I heard that because of the Fox Disney deal, they had cut some lines from Deadpool 2, where Deadpool was going to make fun of Disney. And that would be before the deal went through. But I have to wonder how sensitive Disney might be to people making fun of them. Now, personally, when Star Wars and Marvel Comics went under the Disney banner, the first thing I thought is, Disney. And part of that, to a certain degree, is, you know what, I actually like Disney. I mean, DuckTales is a Disney trademark, and, you know, that was an awesome cartoon. And, you know, it happened under Disney. Pretty impressive, you know. Chippendale's Rescue Rangers. I can think of Disney cartoons, like names that I associate with Disney, that were things that I really liked over the years. But at the same time, it's still Disney, you know. If I think of Disney, I think of Mickey Mouse. And I don't dislike Mickey Mouse, but the first thing I think is, I like Bugs Bunny better, you know. I mean, that, you know, it's like, is that fair? Not necessarily. Then I start to think, well, you know, Disney's just one of those names like Ford. I mean, you can't help but think of the person that created the company and just think of them as a, you know, anti-Semitic jackass that, you know, it's like, it's just not a name that feels that nice, in my opinion. Just comes off as a name that just kind of comes off as bad, you know? And I can't help it. You know, I try not to hold it against Disney because the company is not the actual views of the person that created it, but the company does use that name. You know, it's hard not to think of, you know, just general shittiness, you know, when I think of Disney. You know, it's like, well, when I think of Ford, I don't really think of Henry Ford. I usually think of how bad the Ford Tempo was. Oh, fuck, the Ford Tempo. God damn, if you want to make a car look good, just compare it to the Ford Tempo. Although, actually, when it comes to looking good, they at the time, they were kind of bland. They were all right but bland, but actually, compared to a lot of the cars today, they have a simplistic beauty that makes them almost nice looking. Now, back then, they were like bland. They looked like, you take the design that everybody else had at the time, the shape that is a car, then you just kind of make it as simple and bland as possible. Not ugly, just bland. And that was like the styling of the Tempo. But it also, if you were to compare, for example, you know, I remember driving the Tempo, but I also remember driving Cavaliers around the same time too, before and after the Tempo as well. Both newer Cavaliers and older Cavaliers. And one of the things I described is compared to the Cavalier, the Tempo was a reverse TARDIS, because the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. Well, if you were to compare the Cavalier to a Tempo, the Tempo is bigger on the outside but smaller on the inside. You know, well, what did I say about the TARDIS? Did I say that wrong? The TARDIS is bigger on the inside. Well, compared to a Cavalier, the TARDIS is smaller on the inside even though it's bigger on the outside. Talk about poorly managed space. Just not comfortable. And man, did everything in those things just found a way of falling apart, and spongy steering, and the time. What? There was no sign. I remember the Tempo. No sign of a transmission fluid leak. Like no dripping anywhere, no puddles, no drops. And just all of a sudden, the transmission fluid was gone. I have no idea how that happens. It's not a fluid that could possibly burn like oil. So. I mean, it's kind of like oil, but it doesn't burn like oil because it's in the transmission, not in the engine. What a weird car the Tempo was. But anyway, I should end this soon because my bladder is full and I will soon need to go Jaloja, you know, go fire the phase cannon down the porcelain wormhole, you know. It's Jaloja time. The energy drink is doing its magic all the way to my bladder. Yeah, the energy drink here. I was saying something, though. I was saying something about the Orville, wasn't I? Oh, yeah. I have to wonder if Disney might have a grudge against Seth MacFarlane. And I remember, like, despite Disney as not being a name that I think of in a positive light, you know, like right back to Walt Disney and some of the shitty things Walt Disney was known for. Then I think of when the Guardians of the Galaxy creator was fired for making some crappy tweets. And I think they were meant as jokes. I don't think they were like good jokes, but they were meant as jokes. And I don't really think they were truly harmful, but I never looked that much into them. They just sound like bad tweets. And he was fired for that. And it's like, yeah, that was pretty lame on Disney's part. that Disney was so afraid of of looking negative because a few bad treats from this jackass were discovered. Excuse me, burping up the energy drink. A few bad tweets were found from this jackass. It's like, all right, he was behind two of your really successful movies, but you're gonna boot his ass for some bad tweets because it might look bad. Well, I mean, you kept the name Disney on the company, and oh boy, can you find some bad shit about Walt Disney that, it's like, yeah, I mean, trying to make Disney sound all family friendly and all wonderful and like everybody's nice and hasn't said anything stupid or bad, you might want to take the name Disney off the company. It was like, all right, so basically, Disney can be very sensitive about who they hire for projects. And what's his name? Something Gunn or other, I forget. But the guy who got fired from Guardians of the Galaxy for bad tweets. It was kind of ironic that he was all for the firing of Roseanne. I remember hearing that. And Roseanne's bad tweets that got her fired from ABC, another Disney-owned company. Wasn't it ABC? Yeah, ABC. Was because they sounded racist, but they weren't racist if she had been saying it about somebody who wasn't black. And this person didn't really look black when I saw the picture of them, so when Roseanne said she didn't mean to be racist, I mean, I kind of believe her because the person didn't actually look black. I think people wanted to assume she was racist because she preferred Trump over warmonger Clinton. So, I'm not saying Trump was a good choice, but if you set him next to Clinton, I mean, that's like bad and worse. Would you take bad over worse? Yeah, you'd take bad over worse. Yeah, so yeah. But anyway, that's getting into a whole other debate. But yeah, Roseanne, was technically also booted out of Disney. It's like, yeah, well, guess what? Walt Disney, said, was known for some pretty shitty stuff, and you keep his name on the company. But anyway, yeah, Seth MacFarlane's questionable things, though, that I keep thinking of, is him directly mocking Disney itself. And Seth MacFarlane will mock other creators for doing shitty things. He was mocking Harvey Weinstein before it was popular to mock Harvey Weinstein for the shitty things that Harvey Weinstein did. If I pronounce his name right, is it Weinstein or Weinstein? I don't know. I'm horrible with names. I keep commenting on the fact I'm horrible with names, and I am. And, whether his name is Weinstein or Weinstein, fuck him either way. Fuck him either way. But anyway, Seth MacFarlane was, made fun of him before it was popular. But Seth MacFarlane will make fun of anybody, and he's mocked Disney itself. I mean, there's two things that come to mind. The first one isn't particularly harmful, I don't think. The first one would be the time that he just said, he did a joke where I think he referred to something as a crime or something like that. And he goes, kind of like copyright infringement. And as he says, kind of like copyright infringement, the Peter Griffin character in Family Guy was transforming into Mickey Mouse. And he goes, haha, see you later. It was something like that. I remember that one, which obviously that one shouldn't insult anybody. Of course, he made fun of back then he even made fun of the creator, or not the creator, one of the owner of the Disney company. And there was some scene, I think, where they had like a parody of the guy that actually owns the Disney Corporation, the current guy in charge of things. I'm pretty sure there was like something like that. There was also that. Like little things over the years made references to Disney, but the one that I remember the most was I think it was in The Road to the Multiverse. And, and when Stewie and Brian go into the Disney universe, a parallel universe that is a Disney version of things, and they have the characters singing about pie with, like a different animation style that's kind of like Disney. And even like the animation, I think even the frames per second might have got a little bit higher than average, like Disney. And then the character Mort shows up, who's famous, for being Jewish, and all the characters yell Jew, and then they like attack him and brutally assault him, like, and that happens, like, oh, that's why we shouldn't stick around in the Disney universe, which is a joke about how anti-Semitic Disney of the past has been and the views of the Walt Disney himself. They're basically making fun of Disney for, well, the creator of Disney, like the guy behind Disney, being a anti-Semitic scumbag. And as far as I'm concerned, that's part of Disney's history, and Disney should be mocked for that horrible history. And screw you, Disney. But I don't think we should go overboard and say I'll never buy anything Disney ever again or anything like that. Like, Disney isn't still what they have been, but that's part of their history. And that episode of Family Guy mocked Disney for that, and it was a pretty good shot against Disney and Disney's history in that scene. And I often think of that scene where Disney gets mocked for its history of anti-Semitism in that Family Guy episode. And I have to wonder if the people at Disney are like, we own Fox, so we own Family Guy, or, do we really want this to continue? I have to wonder how spiteful they might really be, or how, if they're so worried about their image that when the guy behind Guardians of the Galaxy, the guy that, directed, was it directed? Yeah, I think he was the director. Did he do more than just direct, though? But basically, somebody who was involved with the Guardians of the Galaxy, who were as successful as they were, makes a couple shitty tweets, and I don't even remember what he said, but it just sounded like bad jackassery. But then again, it could have been worse than what I'm remembering. Found like some old tweets of his. They weren't even recent. And they fired him over it. Then I have to think, if that's on their mind, if public image is on their mind, and that's on their mind, then Seth MacFarlane's history, and especially with his Family Guy characters, mocking Disney for Disney's history of shittiness, might be on their mind, I mean, I could be completely wrong about that. That might not. They might not even be thinking about that, but you have to wonder. Anyway, whatever might go through the minds of people at Fox and at Disney, we all know that if any show deserves to come back for season 3, it's the Orville. In fact, I think of Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty finally got announced that there have been greenlit for a ton of new episodes. More episodes than they'd ever do in just a couple seasons. It's probably going to be a whole bunch of seasons of Rick and Morty in the future, based on the agreement for the number of episodes. And good, Rick and Morty deserves it. Rick and Morty deserves a whole bunch more episodes. Well, guess what? The Orville does too. If anybody deserves to be greenlit for a big future, they shouldn't just be negotiating season 3 for the Orville. They should be negotiating whether or not they'll go past season 7. If they'll outdo the traditional Star Trek run of 7 seasons, because everybody's going to compare the Orville to Star Trek anyway, they should be negotiating seasons 8, 9, and 10 for the Orville. And then they should be negotiating a schedule that won't cause them to have a hiatus of a year, get more than like 12 or 13 episodes, then disappear for a year before the next episodes come out. No, they should be negotiating proper scheduling and funding to get them, more, at least 20 episodes per season, and not a full year-long break between the seasons. Like, a show like The Orville that has done as good as The Orville has, and has won over the fans as much as The Orville has, should have the living hell promoted out of it. And Fox has a history of killing some of their greatest franchises through bad promotion and bad decision making. The Orville has thankfully survived into season 2. Good news. That's an achievement for Fox. And if Fox has any sense whatsoever, they should be greenlighting not just season 3, but 4, 5, 6, and 7. They should begin negotiating contracts like that. And if Disney has any common sense, who are now the owners of Fox, they should realize they let Star Wars get screwed up on their watch. I don't blame the people directly at Disney, because they let the people at LucasArts do what LucasArts will do. They own LucasArts, but they bought LucasArts. They let LucasArts reboot Star Wars. And it was a reboot. It was a partial reboot, but it was a reboot. When they got rid of the expanded universe did have canonical value. When they got rid of that and they decided to rewrite everything and bring in the new sequel trilogy and the spin-off movies, and they handled it the way they handled it. And I'm not just talking Rian Johnson. I'm also talking the horrible shit done by J.J. Abrams. Rogue One, I'm not going to complain about Rogue One, but everything that's not Rogue One of the new Star Wars movies, when they just let that happen, it's like, no. Bad decisions. It's like, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan ever, but I really loved Episode 4. I have mixed opinions of 5 and 6. I have an even lower mixed opinion of Episode 1. Then you have Episode 2, which mixed opinion, but mostly positive. And then Episode 3. I really liked Episodes 4 and 3 of the movies. But ultimately, I don't care about the movies. I care about Knights of the Old Republic, the video game, or the comic, or the Darth Bane novels that are kind of related to the Knights of the Old Republic games, like similar writing and so forth. Like a lot of stuff like that. Like a lot of excellent novels and comics, a really fleshed out world. Decades of fleshing out the world. That they even have guidebooks that flesh out like this timeline. And it was a great science fiction universe that they had for Star Wars. And then they replaced it with pretty crappy, half-assed bullshit new Star Wars universe. Yeah, that happened under Disney's watch. They should have left the novels and comics to do their thing. Even if they wanted to do the new movies, have the new movies be in their own universe. They should have, all the creativity that was going on at Dark Horse Comics and all that stuff, should have just left that continue on. If they weren't going to touch it, they were still going to make money off of it. But no, they flushed Star Wars down the toilet. And they have the Orville. The Orville is not really a parody of Star Wars. But it is inspired by Star Trek. So when you think of the two biggest names in science fiction, it's either Star Trek or Star Wars. It bounced back between either one that gets the most attention depending on the time. I would say Star Trek has the better history, mainly because in the 1990s, I'll take TV shows over movies, but Star Trek also has more movies. I view movie franchises as just being overblown novelty franchises. But Star Trek, had 2 TV shows going on at the same time. And you had Deep Space Nine on the side while running from Star Trek The Next Generation to Star Trek Voyager and then Star Trek Enterprise. And then the history with the Star Trek The Original Series. With everything Star Trek has done, with how Star Trek science fiction has become part of pulp culture, just general awareness. Disney might not have Star Trek, but with the Orville, they have something that has the potential to be on par with Star Trek. The closest I've seen to anything coming to having the potential that Star Trek has, and it failed to live up to that potential, would have been Well, the expanded universe for Star Wars to a degree, but not quite, no. Babylon 5 came close. Babylon 5 had never got the proper backing to become the next Star Trek. But from storytelling, universe building, Babylon 5 could have been the next Star Trek. But it wasn't. The Orville. The Orville is in 2 seasons. The Orville is as close as we've ever gotten to being something on par with Star Trek. And 2 very short seasons at that. Disney, if they have any common sense, wants to take care of this franchise. But anyway, that's me ranting and rambling about Star Trek and the Orville. And as far as I can tell, the camera has frozen. And but I think the audio is still recording. And I've gone for over 100 minutes. And I'm just standing here in front of the camera, guzzling the last of this energy drink, some of which has already made its way to my bladder. So it's time for me to stop. It's time for me to end this recording. It's time for me to go Jaluja! I'm off to Jaluja. I'm going to end this video, and I'm going to go fire the phase cannon down the porcelain wormhole. I'm going to go to the bathroom. The energy drink has given me the energy to walk to the bathroom. And that's good, because that's an important place to end up when I have a bladder full of energy drink. So I'm going to end this thing. And I don't know if the visuals are still recording or not, but I'm pretty sure the audio is. And the time keeps ticking on this timer and still says I'm live. All right, so anyway, I'm ending this video. I'm rambling, I'm ranting, and probably even mispronouncing things that I'm not even aware that I'm mispronouncing, and whatever. But I'm ending this. All right, so I'm going to press the button any second here to end the video. So feel free to look for more of my videos if you found this remotely tolerable. And, you know, blah, 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 whatever. Follow me, YouTube, BitChute, DTube, Subscribe Star, blah, 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 whatever. Blah, blah, blah. End of video, ranting and rambling. Hopefully you've enjoyed and will watch more. Anyway, I am ending this. I am just rambling and ranting, and probably the video's frozen. Ending now.